The morning started like any other Tuesday for Admiral Jack Peterson. He was drinking his coffee on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching Earth slowly spin below them. The blue planet looked peaceful from space, with white clouds swirling over the continents. Jack had been in charge of Earth's newest spaceship for only 6 months, but he loved this view. It reminded him why he had joined the military 20 years ago. Then the alarm started screaming. "Admiral, we have a massive contact dropping out of hyperspace near the moon," Lieutenant Sarah Kim called out from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jack could hear the worry underneath. "It's huge, sir. Bigger than anything we've ever built." Jack set down his coffee cup and moved to the main screen. What he saw made his blood run cold. A ship the size of a small city hung in space between Earth and the moon. Its hull was dark gray and covered with strange bumps and spikes. Energy crackled along its surface like blue lightning. Jack had seen many ships in his career, but nothing like this. "Get me President Morrison on the secure line," Jack ordered. "And send word to all Earth Defense Forces, we might have a problem." The alien ship just sat there for 2 hours. It didn't move, didn't respond to radio calls, didn't do anything except exist in a place where no ship that large should be able to exist. Scientists around the world pointed their telescopes at it and tried to understand what they were seeing. The ship was clearly not human. Its design was too strange, too advanced. Dr. Nathan Cross was one of those scientists. He worked at the International Space Research Center in Colorado, and he had been studying space for 30 years. When the first images of the alien ship reached his computer, he knew humanity had just entered a new age. The ship's hull showed technology that was hundreds of years ahead of anything humans had built. "This changes everything," Nathan told his assistant, Dr. Helen Baker. "We're not alone in the universe anymore." "The question is," Helen replied, "are they friendly?" They got their answer at exactly 2:47 p.m. Eastern Time. Every radio, television, computer, and phone on Earth suddenly stopped working normally. Instead, they all began broadcasting the same message. The voice that came through was cold and mechanical, clearly translated by some kind of computer system. "Primitive species of the third planet from your star. I am Ambassador Vextar of the Korthak Empire, speaking for the Galactic Confederation. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire." President Lisa Morrison was in the White House Situation Room when the message began. She had been meeting with her military advisors about the strange ship when every screen in the room showed the same image. The alien that appeared looked like a giant lizard walking on 2 legs. Its skin was dark green and covered with scales. Its eyes were yellow and cold, like a snake's eyes. "You have 72 of your rotations around your star to prepare for our arrival," the alien continued. "During this time, you will gather your strongest warriors so we can determine which ones are worth keeping alive. You will also prepare lists of your resources and population centers. Your people will be relocated to designated areas for work assignments." The alien paused, and when it spoke again, its voice became even colder. "Any attempt to resist will result in the complete destruction of your planet. We have done this to 47 worlds before yours. Each one thought they could fight us. Each one learned they were wrong. Do not make their mistake." The message ended, and normal broadcasts returned, but the world had changed forever in those few minutes. In the Situation Room, President Morrison looked around the table at her advisors. General Robert Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, was already pulling up files on his tablet. Secretary of Defense Paul Martinez was making notes on a yellow pad. CIA Director Karen Foster was speaking quietly into her phone. "Options," President Morrison said simply. "We could try to negotiate," suggested Secretary of State William Turner. "Maybe. They want something we can give them without a fight." General Hayes shook his head. "Did you hear what that thing said? They've done this 47 times before. This isn't a negotiation, it's a surrender demand." "What about our military?" the president asked. "How do we compare to them?" "Ma'am, their ship is 10 times bigger than our largest vessel, Admiral." Peterson's voice came through the communication system. "Our most powerful weapons are nuclear missiles. They traveled between stars to get here. The technology gap is enormous." Dr. Cross had been invited to join the meeting by video link. His face appeared on one of the screens, and he looked worried but determined. "There might be another option," he said. "I've been studying their broadcast signal. They're using quantum communication technology that we're just beginning to understand, but the fact that they can translate their language into ours so quickly suggests they've studied us for some time." "What does that mean?" President Morrison asked. "It means they think they know us. They think they understand how humans react to threats. But they might be wrong about that." Colonel Amy Rodriguez spoke up from her position at the Pentagon. "Dr. Cross is right. They're following a pattern they've used before. Threaten the population, demand surrender, take over. It's worked for them 47 times because every other species they've met gave up." "But we're not every other species," President Morrison said quietly. Outside the White House, the world was reacting to the alien message in different ways. Some people panicked and tried to flee the cities. Others gathered in churches and mosques and temples to pray. Stock markets crashed as people sold everything and tried to find safe places to hide. But in other places, a different reaction was taking shape. Military bases around the world went to high alert. Scientists began working around the clock to understand the alien technology. Engineers started pulling apart every piece of advanced equipment they could find, looking for ways to improve human weapons. Captain Ryan Lewis was commanding a patrol ship near Mars when the message came through. His small crew listened to the aliens' words in silence. When it was over, his communications officer, Lieutenant Mark Johnson, turned to him. "Orders, sir." Ryan looked out at the red planet spinning slowly beside them. Mars had been humanity's first step toward the stars. It represented everything humans could accomplish when they worked together and refused to give up. "Set course for Earth," Ryan said. "Full speed. And send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them the UES Guardian is coming home and we're ready for a fight." Back on the alien ship, Ambassador Vexitar was reviewing the data his scanners had collected about Earth. The planet had abundant resources and a large population that could be put to work in the Confederation's mines and factories. The humans seemed to have basic space travel and nuclear weapons, but nothing that could threaten a Confederation dreadnought. "Sub-Commander Korth, what is the status of the human military response?" Vextar asked his aide. "Their ships are moving toward defensive positions around their planet," the smaller alien replied. "Their communication traffic has increased significantly, but there are no signs of surrender preparations." Vextar's reptilian features showed confusion. "Perhaps they do not understand the futility of resistance. We will give them time to consider their situation. If they have not surrendered by the deadline, we will demonstrate our power by destroying one of their cities." "Which city, Ambassador?" "It does not matter. Choose a small one. We want to educate them, not waste valuable resources." Neither Vextar nor his crew understood what they had just done. They had given humanity the one thing that made humans most dangerous: time to think, time to plan, and time to get angry. In the 72 hours that followed, the human race would do what it had always done best. It would adapt, innovate, and refuse to surrender. The aliens thought they were giving Earth time to prepare for defeat. Instead, they were giving humanity time to prepare for war. The first 24 hours after the alien message changed everything on Earth. While most people expected panic and chaos, something else happened instead. Humanity did what it always did when faced with extinction. It got to work. Colonel Amy Rodriguez had not slept since the aliens arrived. She stood in the Pentagon's deepest underground bunker, surrounded by the brightest minds in military technology. Her Advanced Weapons Division had been working on theoretical projects for years. Now those theories had to become reality in less than 3 days. "Show me what we have," Amy said to her team. Dr. Helen Baker stepped forward with a thick folder. "We've been monitoring their communication signals since they arrived. The quantum transmission technology they use is incredibly advanced, but we think we understand the basic principles." "Can we use it?" Amy asked. "Maybe. If we can reverse the quantum entanglement process, we might be able to turn their own technology against them, but we need more time to test it." "Time is the one thing we don't have," Amy replied. "How long do you need?" Normally, 6 months, with unlimited resources and no sleep? Maybe 48 hours? Amy nodded. You have unlimited resources. Get started. Across the country, similar conversations were happening in secret facilities. The Skunk Works division in California was pulling apart every piece of advanced aircraft they had ever built. Engineers in Texas were modifying nuclear weapons to work in space. Scientists in Florida were designing new propulsion systems that could make human ships faster and more maneuverable. Captain Ryan Lewis and his crew had made it back to Earth orbit, where they found a scene that amazed them. Ships were launching from the surface every few hours, carrying supplies and personnel to the growing human fleet. Construction crews were working around the clock to modify existing vessels for combat. Look at that, Lieutenant Mark Johnson said, pointing out the viewport. They're turning cargo ships into warships. Ryan watched as a massive freight hauler was fitted with missile launchers and armor plating. It would never be as advanced as the alien dreadnought, but it would carry enough firepower to make the aliens notice. They want a fight, Ryan said, quietly. They're going to get one. President Morrison had not left the White House Situation Room since the crisis began. She was coordinating responses from governments around the world, and what she saw gave her hope. Every major nation had agreed to share their most secret military technology. Old enemies were working together to build weapons that could hurt the aliens. Madam President, General Hayes said, entering the room with a tablet in his hand. I have an update from our research teams. Good news or bad news? Morrison asked. Both. The bad news is that their ship has enough firepower to destroy our entire planet several times over. The good news is that we think we know how their weapons work. Dr. Nathan Cross appeared on the main screen, calling in from his laboratory in Colorado. Behind him, teams of scientists were working frantically with equipment that looked like it had been built in the last few hours. We've been analyzing the energy signatures from their ship, Nathan explained. Their weapons use plasma, contained in magnetic fields. Very advanced, but the principles are similar to technology we use in fusion reactors. Can we defend against it? President Morrison asked. Defense might be impossible, Nathan admitted. But we might be able to build similar weapons of our own. In orbit, aboard the UES Defiance, Admiral Jack Peterson was coordinating the growing human fleet. Ships that had been scattered across the solar system were returning to Earth. Mining vessels from the asteroid belt, research ships from Mars, even the luxury cruise liner that had been carrying tourists to the moon. All of them were being converted for war. Admiral, Lieutenant Sarah Kim reported, we now have 37 vessels in the defense fleet. Most of them are armed with nuclear missiles and conventional weapons. Against a ship that size, it might not be enough, Jack said. But it's what we have. The alien ship remained motionless near the moon, occasionally scanning Earth with energy beams that made the planet's electronics flicker. Ambassador Vextar was growing impatient with the human response. Sub-Commander Korth, he called to his aide. What is the status of human surrender preparations? Ambassador, our scans show increased activity around their planet. Their primitive spacecraft are gathering in defensive positions. We detect high levels of industrial activity on the surface. Vextar's yellow eyes narrowed. Are they preparing to surrender or to fight? Unknown, Ambassador. Their behavior does not match the pattern we have seen on other worlds. This worried Vextar more than he wanted to admit. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Galactic Confederation had developed a system that worked perfectly. Arrive with overwhelming force, make demands, wait for surrender. The conquered species always followed the same pattern: panic, despair, acceptance. But humans were doing something different. Instead of panicking, they were working. Instead of despairing, they seemed to be getting angrier. Instead of accepting defeat, they were preparing for battle. Back on Earth, the work continued without stopping. Dr. Helen Baker had made a breakthrough with the quantum communication technology. Working with a team of physicists from around the world, she had figured out how to weaponize the aliens' own signals. If we can generate a quantum pulse on the same frequency they use for communication, she explained to Colonel Rodriguez, we might be able to disrupt their systems. Or even better, we might be able to send feedback through their network that could damage their equipment. How do we deliver this weapon? Amy asked. We need to get close to their ship, close enough to establish a quantum link with their communication. Array. Amy looked at the tactical display showing the alien dreadnought. Getting close to that ship would be suicide for any human vessel, but maybe that was exactly what they needed to do. Meanwhile, other teams were working on more conventional weapons. The nuclear arsenal that had been built to fight wars on Earth was being modified for space combat. Engineers were designing new delivery systems that could work in the vacuum of space. Chemists were creating explosives that could function without oxygen. Captain Lewis received new orders that made him smile for the first time since the crisis began. His ship, the UES Guardian, was being equipped with an experimental weapon system. He didn't fully understand how it worked, but the scientists assured him it would hurt the aliens. Captain, his communications officer reported, incoming message from Earth Command. The face of Admiral Peterson appeared on the screen. Ryan, you and your crew have been selected for a special mission. We're going to show these aliens what humans do when they're threatened. What are our orders, sir? Get as close to that alien ship as possible. When the time comes, you'll know what to do. As the second day after the ultimatum began, humanity was no longer the same species the aliens had first encountered. Fear had been replaced by determination. Despair had been replaced by rage. The scattered nations of Earth had become a single fighting force with one goal: make the aliens regret their decision to threaten humanity. President Morrison stood before the cameras to address the world one more time before the final day of the alien deadline. My fellow humans, she began, her voice steady and strong. Tomorrow, we will show the galaxy what happens when someone tries to intimidate Earth. We will show them that humanity bows to no one. We will show them that threatening our home was the biggest mistake they could have made. Around the world, people watched her speech and felt something they had not felt since the aliens arrived. Hope. Not hope for rescue or mercy, but hope that humanity would make these invaders pay for their arrogance. The aliens had given Earth 72 hours to surrender. Instead, they had given humanity 72 hours to prepare for war. It was a mistake they would not live to make again. The 72-hour deadline had passed. Ambassador Vexitar stood on the bridge of his massive ship, waiting for the surrender signal from Earth. His yellow eyes watched the planet below, expecting to see white flags or surrender broadcasts. Instead, he saw something that confused him. The human ships were still in position around their planet. Their industrial activity had increased, not decreased. Their communication signals showed no signs of surrender preparation. After 3,000 years of conquest, Vextar had never seen a species react this way to Confederation demands. Sub-Commander Korth, he called to his aide, have the humans responded to our ultimatum? No surrender signal detected, Ambassador. Their military forces remain active. They appear to be waiting. Vextar's scaled features twisted into an expression of anger. These primitive creatures were defying the greatest empire in the galaxy. It was time to teach them the price of resistance. Target one of their population centers, he ordered. A small one. We will show them what happens to species that refuse to submit. The weapons officer, a massive reptilian creature with 4 arms, began working at his control station. Target, selected Ambassador, a coastal city with approximately 50,000 inhabitants. Fire. On Earth, the city of Portland, Oregon was starting another normal day. People were going to work, children were going to school, and life was continuing despite the alien threat hanging over their heads. Many residents had evacuated, but thousands had chosen to stay in their homes rather than flee. Dr. Nathan Cross was in his laboratory when the alarms began screaming. Every monitoring station on Earth detected the massive energy buildup on the alien ship. The plasma cannon that extended from the dreadnought's hull began glowing with purple light. All stations, this is Control, came the emergency broadcast. Energy spike detected from alien vessel. Possible weapons discharge imminent. Nathan grabbed his phone and called the White House Situation Room. This is Dr. Cross. They're charging their main weapon. Someone needs to warn Portland. President Morrison was already watching the satellite feeds when Nathan's call came through. The alien ship's weapon was glowing brighter by the second. She knew there was no time to evacuate the city. "Get me the mayor of Portland," she ordered. But it was too late. The plasma beam that lanced down from space was brighter than the sun. It struck Portland's downtown area at exactly 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. The energy release was so intense that satellites in orbit had to shut down their sensors to avoid being damaged. The explosion could be seen from 300 miles away. A column of superheated plasma rose 15 miles into the sky, forming a mushroom cloud that dwarfed anything humanity had ever created. When the light faded and the shock waves stopped shaking the ground, Portland was gone. Where 50,000 people had lived and worked just moments before, there was now a perfectly round crater 3 miles wide. The edges of the crater glowed with residual energy that would take hours to cool down. Nothing remained of the city except a hole in the ground and a pillar of radioactive steam rising into the atmosphere. The shock of what had just happened rippled across the planet in minutes. Every television station, every radio broadcast, every internet feed showed the same horrifying image: the crater where Portland used to be. President Morrison stood in the Situation Room, staring at the satellite images. Around her, military leaders and advisors waited for her response. The room was completely silent except for the hum of electronic equipment. "Madam President," General Hayes said quietly, "what are your orders?" Morrison looked up from the images, and everyone in the room could see that something had changed in her eyes. The careful diplomat was gone. In her place was something harder, angrier, and much more dangerous. "Get me Admiral Peterson," she said, her voice steady but cold. "Tell him Operation Checkmate is approved. Full authorization. Aboard the UES Defiance." Admiral Jack Peterson received the president's message with grim satisfaction. For the past 3 days, his ships had been preparing for this moment. The aliens had just made the biggest mistake in their long history of conquest. "All ships, this is Admiral Peterson," he broadcast to the human fleet. "Portland has been destroyed. 50,000 of our people are dead. The aliens think this will make us surrender. They're about to learn how wrong they are." The response from the fleet was immediate. 37 ships began moving toward the alien dreadnought, their crews ready for battle. They knew most of them would not survive the fight, but they also knew that Portland demanded justice. Captain Ryan Lewis, commanding the UES Guardian, was among the first ships to break orbit. His vessel had been equipped with one of Dr. Helen Baker's quantum weapons, a device that could theoretically disrupt the aliens' communication systems. "Captain," Lieutenant Mark Johnson reported, "we're receiving tactical data from all fleet units. Looks like we're going in together." "Good," Ryan replied. "They wanted to show us their power. Now we show them ours." The alien ship's sensors detected the approaching human fleet, but Vextar was not concerned. 37 primitive ships against a Confederation dreadnought was not a battle, it was target practice. "Sub-Commander, deploy fighters to destroy the approaching vessels," he ordered. "Make it quick. I want to broadcast their destruction to the planet below." But as the human ships drew closer, something unexpected happened. Instead of flying in formation like a normal fleet, they began moving in a pattern that confused the alien sensors. Some ships dove toward Earth's atmosphere, using the planet's gravity to increase their speed. Others spread out in a wide circle, approaching from multiple directions at once. "Ambassador," the weapons officer reported, "the human ships are not following standard attack patterns. Our targeting systems are having difficulty locking onto them." Vextar studied the tactical display with growing concern. The human ships were moving like a pack of hunters, not like a military formation. They were using their own planet as cover, diving in and out of the atmosphere in ways that should have been impossible for such primitive craft. Dr. Helen Baker was monitoring the battle from her laboratory on Earth. The quantum weapons she had designed were untested in real combat, but the theory was sound. If the human ships could get close enough to the alien vessel, they might be able to turn the Confederation's own technology against them. "All Guardian units," she broadcast to the attacking fleet, "quantum torpedoes are armed and ready. Remember, you need to get within 5,000 meters of their hull for the weapons to be effective. 5,000 meters from a ship that was a mile long and bristling with weapons meant flying into certain death. But the human crews had volunteered for this mission knowing they probably would not return home. The first alien fighters launched from the Dreadnought, sleek silver craft that moved faster than anything humans had ever built. But the human ships had an advantage the aliens did not expect. Desperation combined with innovation. Lieutenant Sarah Kim, now commanding a converted mining vessel called the Earth's Fury, executed a maneuver that defied military logic. She flew directly into a cloud of plasma fire from the alien fighters, using her ship's heavy mining armor to absorb damage that would have destroyed a normal spacecraft. When she emerged from the plasma cloud, scarred and venting atmosphere but still flying, she was close enough to launch her quantum torpedoes directly at the alien ship's communication array. The torpedoes struck the Dreadnought's hull and seemed to disappear for a moment. Then the quantum feedback effect that Dr. Baker had theorized began to work. Energy discharges rippled across the alien ship's surface as their own communication systems turned against them. Impossible, Vextar hissed as his ship shuddered under the impact of weapons that should not have been able to penetrate Confederation shields. How are their primitive weapons affecting our systems? Unknown, Ambassador, Subcommander Korth replied, his voice showing the first signs of fear. Our shields appear to be ineffective against their quantum-based weapons. For the first time in 3,000 years, a Confederation dreadnought was taking damage from a primitive species. The humans had done something that every military expert in the galaxy said was impossible. They had learned to fight back effectively. The battle was far from over, but the aliens were no longer certain of victory. And in the depths of space, that uncertainty was about to become their greatest weakness. The battle around the alien dreadnought was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships swarmed around the massive vessel like angry wasps attacking a giant. They used tactics that no military academy in Confederation space had ever taught because no species had ever been desperate enough to try them. Captain Ryan Lewis pushed his ship, the UES Guardian, harder than it was designed to go. The quantum torpedo launcher that Dr. Helen Baker had installed was charging for another shot. But he needed to get closer to the alien ship's main weapon array. Captain, their fighters are closing on our position, Lieutenant Mark Johnson warned from his station. Ryan looked at the tactical display. 3 alien fighters were diving toward his ship, their plasma cannons already firing. The bolts of energy lit up space around the Guardian, some of them close enough to make the hull plates glow with heat. Take us into the atmosphere, Ryan ordered. Sir, that will put enormous stress on the ship, his engineer protested. The stress won't kill us. Those fighters will. The Guardian dove toward Earth using the planet's gravity well to increase speed. The alien fighters followed, but their sleek designs were not built for atmospheric flight. As they entered the upper atmosphere, their ships began to shake and slow down. Ryan pulled up at the last possible moment, skimming the edge of space, where the atmosphere was thin enough for his ship to survive but thick enough to disrupt the alien pursuit. When he emerged from the dive, he was behind the fighters instead of in front of them. Fire everything, he ordered. The Guardian's missiles and energy weapons struck 2 of the alien fighters before they could react. The third fighter spun away, damaged and retreating toward the safety of the dreadnought. Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out. Human ships were using every trick they could think of to stay alive long enough to hurt the aliens. Some ships worked in pairs, with one drawing fire while the other attacked. Others used the debris from destroyed vessels as cover. Lieutenant Sarah Kim in the Earth's Fury had already fired her quantum torpedoes and was now using her mining ship's heavy equipment as weapons. The massive drill that had been designed to break apart asteroids worked just as well on alien fighter craft. Aboard the alien dreadnought, Ambassador Vexitar was experiencing something he had never felt before: doubt. His massive ship was taking damage from weapons that should not have been able to penetrate Confederation shields. His fighters were being destroyed by ships that were barely more advanced than chemical rockets. Sub-Commander Korth, he called, his voice showing strain for the first time. Status report. Ambassador, we have lost 12 fighters. The human vessels are using unconventional tactics that our pilots are not trained to counter. Additionally, their quantum-based weapons are causing system failures throughout the ship. Vextar studied the tactical display with growing alarm. The human fleet had been reduced to 23 ships, but those remaining vessels were still fighting with a ferocity that defied explanation. Every other species the Confederation had encountered would have surrendered after losing so many ships. How many more ships must they lose before they retreat? He wondered aloud. Ambassador, the weapons officer reported. Our main plasma cannon is showing power fluctuations. The quantum feedback from their weapons may have damaged our primary systems. This was impossible. The Dreadnought's weapons had destroyed planets. A few primitive torpedoes should not have been able to affect them at all. On Earth, Dr. Nathan Cross was monitoring the battle from his laboratory. The quantum weapons were working better than anyone had hoped, but he could see that the human fleet was taking terrible losses. Ships were disappearing from his screens one by one as alien weapons found their targets. Dr. Baker, he called to his colleague, we need to give our ships a better chance. Is there any way to increase the quantum feedback effect? Helen looked up from her calculations, her face showing exhaustion from 3 days without sleep. If we could coordinate all remaining quantum torpedoes to fire simultaneously at the same target, the feedback loop might cascade through their entire ship. What would that do? Either nothing, or it would overload every system on their vessel. Nathan grabbed his communication headset. All Guardian units, this is Earth Control. Prepare for coordinated quantum strike. Target the main weapon array, fire on my mark. Captain Ryan Lewis heard the order and felt his heart skip a beat. A coordinated attack meant flying close enough to the alien ship that escape would be impossible. But if it worked, it might end the battle. All ships, this is Captain Lewis, he broadcast to the remaining fleet. You heard the order. It's been an honor serving with you all. The surviving human ships began their final approach. They came from every direction at once, converging on the alien dreadnought's main weapon like arrows aimed at a target. Alien. Defensive fire filled the space around them, and more ships died with each passing second. The UES Brave, commanded by Captain Lisa Murphy, took a direct hit from a plasma cannon and began breaking apart. But Captain Murphy kept her ship on course even as the hull came apart around her. For Portland, she whispered, and fired her quantum torpedo just before her ship exploded. One by one, the remaining human vessels reached firing range and launched their weapons. Quantum torpedoes struck the alien ship's main weapon array from 12 different angles simultaneously. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the feedback effect began. Energy discharges rippled across the dreadnought's hull like lightning. Internal. Explosions sent debris flying into space. The massive ship's lights flickered and went out section by section. What is happening to our ship? Vextar demanded. But his crew had no answers. Systems were failing faster than they could be repaired. The quantum cascade was spreading through every circuit and power conduit on the vessel. The dreadnought's main weapon, which had destroyed Portland just hours before, suddenly overloaded. The explosion was visible from Earth's surface, a brilliant flash that lit up the space around the moon. When the light faded, the alien ship was still there, but it was no longer the mighty vessel that had arrived to conquer Earth. Its hull was cracked and venting atmosphere. Its weapons were silent. Emergency lights flickered weakly along its damaged frame. Of the human fleet that had started the battle, only 7 ships remained. But they had accomplished what everyone said was impossible. They had defeated a Confederation dreadnought. Captain Ryan Lewis, his ship barely holding together, opened a communication channel to the alien vessel. This is Captain Lewis of the United Earth Space Command, he transmitted. Your ship is crippled. Your weapons are destroyed. Surrender now, and we will allow you to evacuate. The response came after a long pause. Vexitar's voice, no longer cold and arrogant, crackled through the static. How is this possible? We are the Galactic Confederation. We have conquered 47 worlds. You are primitives. We were primitives, Ryan replied. You gave us 72 hours to evolve. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake was killing 50,000 of our people. We don't forget, we don't forgive, and we don't surrender. Aboard the damaged dreadnought, Vextar looked around his ruined bridge. Half his crew was dead or wounded. His mighty ship was barely functional. For 3,000 years, the Confederation had ruled through fear and overwhelming force. Now, for the first time, that rule had been challenged successfully. "Sub-Commander," he said quietly, "send a message to Confederation Command. Tell them we have encountered a species unlike any other. Tell them humanity is dangerous." "What should we tell them about the invasion, Ambassador?" Vextar looked at the tactical display showing the 7 human ships still guarding their planet. Such a small force, but they had proven that the impossible was just another word for something that hadn't been tried yet. "Tell them the invasion has failed. Tell them to avoid this system. Tell them that humans are not like the others." The battle for Earth was over, but the war between humanity and the galaxy was just beginning. The news of the alien defeat spread across the galaxy faster than anyone thought possible. In the 3,000 years of Confederation rule, no primitive species had ever destroyed a dreadnought. The impossible had happened, and every world, under Confederation control, heard about it within hours. On the aquatic world of Nereid Prime, Ambassador Zethkai of the Nereid Empire called an emergency meeting of his council. The blue-skinned diplomat had served the Confederation for 2 centuries, but he had never seen anything like the reports coming from Earth. "The humans destroyed the Void Piercer," he announced to the shocked assembly. "A primitive species with chemical rockets and nuclear weapons defeated a ship that could sterilize planets." "How is this possible?" demanded General Korax, his gills fluttering with agitation. The Korthak dreadnought had shields that could stop anything. According to Vextar's final transmission, the humans weaponized our own quantum communication technology against us. They turned our advantages into weaknesses. The silence that followed was heavy with implications. If humans could do this, what did it mean for Confederation rule? What did it mean for species that had been conquered centuries ago? Meanwhile, on Earth, the aftermath of the battle was just beginning. President Morrison stood before the United Nations Assembly, addressing representatives from every nation on the planet. Behind her, a massive screen showed the crippled alien ship still hanging near the moon. "The threat to our world is over," she announced. "But our responsibility is just beginning. We have proven that the galaxy's greatest empire can be defeated. Now we must decide what to do with that knowledge." The alien ship had surrendered after its weapons were destroyed, but it could not leave the solar system. The damage to its engines was too severe. For the first time in human history, Earth had prisoners from another world. Dr. Nathan Cross was leading the team studying the captured alien technology. Working alongside Dr. Helen Baker and engineers from around the world, he was beginning to understand just how advanced the Confederation really was. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours in some areas," he reported to President Morrison. "But they've become dependent on it. They stopped innovating because they didn't need to. Every species they encountered was too primitive to fight." "Back until they met us," the president replied. "Until they met us," Nathan agreed. "We're the first species that forced them to face something they couldn't solve with superior firepower." In the weeks that followed the battle, Earth began to change in ways that surprised everyone. The unity that had formed during the crisis did not disappear when the aliens were defeated. Instead, it grew stronger. Nations that had been enemies for centuries found themselves working together to reverse engineer alien technology. Captain Ryan Lewis, now promoted to admiral for his role in the battle, was given command of Earth's first faster-than-light ship. The UES Retribution was built using salvaged alien technology, combined with human engineering. It was smaller than the Confederation dreadnought, but it was faster and more maneuverable. "Where will you go first?" President Morrison asked during the ship's launch ceremony. "Proxima Centauri," Ryan replied. "Intelligence suggests the Confederation has an outpost there. It's time to let them know that Earth is not defenseless anymore." The launch of the Retribution marked the beginning of humanity's expansion into the galaxy. But it also marked something else: the end of Confederation dominance through fear alone. News of human victories began reaching enslaved worlds throughout the galaxy. On the mining planet Kepler 442b, workers who had toiled under Confederation rule for generations heard the impossible story of the species that had fought back and won. The humans destroyed a dreadnought with primitive ships, whispered Yala, a member of the insect-like hive collective. If they can do it, maybe we can too. Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds. Species that had surrendered without a fight were beginning to wonder if they had given up too easily. The Confederation's greatest weapon had always been the belief that resistance was futile. Humanity had shattered that belief forever. Ambassador Vextar, now a prisoner aboard his own ship, watched Earth through the viewport of his damaged vessel. The blue planet looked peaceful, but he knew better now. Appearances could be deceiving. The humans had taught him that primitive did not mean weak, and peaceful did not mean defenseless. "Sub-Commander Korth," he said to his aide, "compose a message to Confederation Command." "What should it say, Ambassador?" Vexitar was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the battle that had changed everything. "Tell them that the age of easy conquest is over. Tell them that there is a species in this galaxy that will fight back. Tell them that humanity remembers every slight, every threat, every act of aggression." He paused, watching as human ships patrolled the space around Earth. "And tell them that we are no longer the hunters. We have become the hunted." 3 months after the battle, the UES Retribution dropped out of hyperspace above the Confederation outpost at Proxima Centauri. The space station's commander, Fleet Admiral Vostek, had been expecting this day since the reports from Earth reached his desk. "Human vessel," he transmitted. "This is a Confederation facility. You are ordered to withdraw immediately." The response came in a calm, steady voice that reminded Vostek of the humans who had destroyed the Void Piercer. "This is Admiral Ryan Lewis of the United Earth Space Command. You have 1 hour to evacuate this system. After that, we're going to show you what happens when you threaten humanity's home." Vostek looked at his tactical display. The human ship was smaller than his station, but he had read the reports. He knew what humans could do when they were angry. "All personnel, begin immediate evacuation," he ordered. The evacuation took 57 minutes. The destruction of the outpost took 3. As the Confederation station exploded in brilliant white light, Admiral Lewis opened a communication channel that would reach every inhabited world in the galaxy. "This is Admiral Ryan Lewis speaking for the people of Earth. The Galactic Confederation came to our world expecting easy conquest. They found something else instead. They found a species that refuses to kneel." He paused, watching debris from the station drift through space. "To every world under Confederation rule, know this: you are not alone. Resistance is not futile. Freedom is possible. To the Confederation leadership, know this: humanity protects its own, and we have very long memories. The next time you consider threatening a world simply because you can, remember what happened when you tried to intimidate Earth." The message spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, oppressed species heard the words and felt something they had not felt in centuries: hope. The Galactic Confederation still existed, still controlled most of the galaxy, but their rule was no longer absolute. There was a crack in their armor, and that crack had a name: humanity. In the years that followed, more species would find the courage to resist. Some would fail, but others would succeed. The galaxy was changing, and it all began with a simple truth that the Confederation had forgotten: never threaten someone's home unless you're prepared for war. Earth stood as proof that even the mightiest empire could fall to those who refused to surrender. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of resistance had begun.